Oh, it is great to be here. And I was given the lie you can't be uniquely who you are and be used by God. And I love to use humor when I speak, so much so that I was just at an event, and the pastor, when I was done, it was a date night event, he got up and he prayed for the evening and everything that took place. And when he got to my part, he said, "And Lord, thank you for whatever it was Ted just did." And so I don't know if it was a talk, a message, or what, but I'm going to add in this ministry live. Marriage and ministry are too serious to have fun. And how many of you would say your spouse has a great sense of humor? Would you raise your hand? I'll give you a second if you want to ponder that. I can see some hands going up. So if you think you have a great sense of humor, would you raise your hand? Well, I want to start where Costi ended his message, honoring a man in my life. I went to Dallas Seminary when Pastor Chuck Swindoll was the president, and he on October 18th turned 90 years old, and then the next Sunday preached his last message as senior pastor at Stonebriar Community Church in Frisco, Texas. And I loved sitting in chapel at Dallas Seminary under Pastor Swindoll. And a lot of people don't know this about him, but he almost didn't go into ministry because of his sense of humor. He thought ministry was too serious, and he thought that the pulpit was definitely too serious. And he writes in his book, Laugh Again, I want to share with you. "My vocation is among the most serious of all professions. As a minister of the gospel and as the senior pastor of a church, the concerns I deal with are eternal in dimension. A week doesn't pass without my hearing of or dealing with life in the raw. Marriages are breaking, homes are splitting, people are hurting, jobs are dissolving, addictions of every description are rampant. Needs are enormous, endless, and heart-rending. The most natural thing for me to do would be to allow all of this to rob me of my joy and to change me from a person who has always found life as well as laughed loudly and often." If you've ever heard Dr. Swindoll laugh in person, would you raise your hand? It is a loud, booming laugh. He said, "I would not allow that to turn me into a stoic, frowning clergyman. No thanks. Matter of fact, that was my number one fear many years ago. Thinking that I must look somber and ultra serious 24 hours a day resulted in my resisting a call into ministry for several years. I distinctly remember wrestling with the Lord over all this before he pinned me to the mat and whispered a promise in my ear that forced me to surrender. You can faithfully serve me, but you can still be yourself. Being my servant doesn't require you to stop laughing." Dr. Swindoll said that was all I needed to hear. God has given me a sense of humor, and I can bless my spouse, children, and congregation by making them laugh. One of my favorite chapels with Dr. Swindoll, he was so practical as he tried to encourage us young guys going into ministry. He gave us a list once in chapel of cars that we wouldn't be allowed to drive as a pastor. Does anybody remember that if you were there? I mean, he went make and model. You can't drive these cars because people will talk. Now, the people talking can drive these cars, but they won't want you to drive these cars. But he goes, "You know what I found, guys? No one's ever going to complain if you drive an F-350 King Ranch." And now that's a pastor from Texas. Where's my Texas table back there, right? Yeah, you can drive that King Ranch. So today I want to share with you and encourage you and allow us to laugh a little bit. And even encourage you, if you have that sense of humor, it doesn't have to stop when you step up here. And Dr. Swindoll was a great example for us, one who could go through deep teaching, doctrinal teaching, verse by verse through books of the Bible, but kept us laughing at the same time. I want to ask you a question as I share with you just a little bit about my marriage and family. How many of you remember Olin Mills? Anybody remember Olin Mills? Now watch this. You've never heard of Olin Mills in your life. Would you raise your hand? Let me just see. I always like to explain to the young people. Olin Mills, pretend your entire family just got arrested and they need a group mugshot. That's Olin Mills. We all marched into the basement of our church to get our directory picture. That was the 80s. What year were you born? 82. Okay. So you should be in a mugshot somewhere. I mean, if you grew up in a church home. Anyway, that was the 80s. In the 90s, we had glamour shots. Raise your hand if you had a glamour shot. Okay, raise your hand if you regret your glamour shot. I've never seen anybody happy with their glamour shot. And you know, one day your grandkids are going to be going through your stuff. You won't be around to defend yourself. And they're going to be like, what was going on with Grandma? That was some weird stuff happening. So 80s Olin Mills gone. 90s glamour shots gone. Now the photographers, they're all outdoor, and they're very excited people. I don't know if you've met these photographers. They got a lot of passion. And we showed up to this park in our hometown of Branson, Missouri, and the photographer was very excited. Said, all right, Amy, you stand there. Ted, you go back there 30 feet. I want you to sprint up. I want you to grab her. I want you to pick her up, spin her around, set her back down. I said, should we stretch first? I didn't come prepared for this whole activity. And she goes, just trust me, it's great. You're going to love these pictures. So, and I'm not an athlete, but I did it. I went back. I sprinted up. I grabbed Amy. At about the 180 mark, I lost my balance. And this is our 25th wedding anniversary picture. For our 25th wedding anniversary picture, I body slammed my wife to the ground with a force and with a passion. And I'm at that age, you don't get up right away after you fall down. Photographer comes over and goes, are you guys all right? I'm like, tell me you got that. She did not get that. All that for nothing. This was 2 minutes later. And it's the story of our marriage. It's the story of our ministry. I am married to this woman, and this woman loves to laugh, okay? And I can admit, she's hard to make laugh. Like, it's got to be good to get her to laugh. But she has what I call a silent patriotic laugh. When she finds something funny, she places her hand over her heart. She leans forward, and nothing comes out. And my goal is to get that laugh out of Amy Cunningham every single day. Now, I'm married to a strong woman. Raise your hand if you're married to a strong woman. Do you want me to raise my hand right now? Seems like a trap. How many of you love being married to a strong woman? I love being married to a strong woman. Everything about my wife is passion. She got so much passion. And Kossi was talking about the wives who feel like they have to live up to something. That's never been my wife. She has this real, she went during the pandemic when everybody was giving us their opinions. We're sitting on lawn chairs in the garage one morning, and Amy said, here's what I want to have happen. I want a button on the church website that says complaints and criticism. I go, we don't need to solicit this stuff. We're getting plenty of it unsolicited. She goes, no. When they hit the button, it sends them to the website of a church down the street. That's what we want to do. But my wife has a Fitbit, right? How many of you got a Fitbit? My wife loves her Fitbit, and everything with my wife is getting her steps. She's passionate about getting her steps. And I can come home from church and be like, hey, can we just stroll through the neighborhood? No, we're going to get her steps. And she'll ask me halfway through our walk, are you squeezing your cheeks together? Hey, listen. I grew up independent, fundamental, premillennial, King James Version only Baptist. I'm uptight pretty much all the time. You can rest assured on that one right there. Where's my Baptist Bible College guys back there? Raise your hand. A whole table of them back there. Welcome. Don't leave the room. Okay, so my wife loves this show on TV with Chip and Joanna Gaines called Fixer Upper. And I've said if I ever meet Chip Gaines, I'm going to punch him right in the face. I hate that man and everything he stands for because he's ruining our marriage. Can I get an amen on that one right there? I come home from church, and she's in the dining room like, what's going on? She goes, I think after dinner we should get rid of this wall. Can we get rid of this wall right here? And I had to go online and find a term to save our marriage. The term is load-bearing. Every wall in our home is load-bearing. You can't touch one or the whole house comes down. We finally got rid of them, and she got into this Marie Kondo with tidying up on Netflix, and I hate her more than Chip Gaines. Her passion is decluttering, and that's one of my wife's love languages. My wife has 2 love languages, acts of service and quality time, which means I serve her for long periods of time. That's what these 2 love languages meet. And in the middle is the love language of decluttering. She has this fundamental core value. If you haven't used it in a while, you don't need it. Wrong. And I'm not a hoarder. I like to keep some of my stuff, though. And whenever she watches this show, she always starts in the garage. She gets the garbage can on wheels. She flips the lid back, and like a grocery cart around the garage, she's just looking for stuff to throw away. She'll hold up one item at a time. Hey, are you still using that? I'm like, babe, that's a hammer. Well, when's the last time? You better have an answer pretty quick. She is passionate about life, and I go for that silent patriotic laugh every single day. My daughter Corinne, this is a picture of Corinne. She is my pioneer girl, and this is an old picture. She's married now, and she hates that I show this picture, but I love it because she was knitting, sewing, crocheting. Everything was about the outdoors. She loved this little deer a neighbor of ours raised named Sugar. This is my son Carson. He loves deer too, and oh, we're safe among friends. That's good. You know, I'm in about 60 to 70 churches a year, and every year one or two pastors will tell me I can't show that picture at their church. And I asked if I could show it here, and Josh is like, yeah, you're good. Like half the profile pictures of our gatherers today. So I grew up in a fishing family. We didn't hunt growing up, but my son Carson, I'll just never forget this. He's 11 years old. He's a sophomore at Liberty University now. But he dropped this 11-point buck on our first hunting trip. And we were high-fiving, having the time of our life. And about 5 minutes after celebrating, he goes, Dad, what do we do now? What do we do now? I'm like, I have absolutely no idea. But I think, according to the movie Red Dawn, you got to take a bite out of its heart. That's where we're going with the whole thing. While I yell Wolverines and smear blood on your face, I think is where we're doing all this. So I share all that to say I am so grateful. I have adult children now. I have adult children who love the Lord and serve the church, and I think part of our strategy still as parents, we let them be who they were. We didn't put them under the microscope. We didn't put these expectations on them that we didn't have for the other young people in our church. And someone asked me this morning, what's your definition of success? And my definition of success, I immediately went to just my family. Like that's the measure for me. And I want to take you to the book of Ecclesiastes. If you haven't been there lately, I love this book. You know, chapter 1, life is hard. Chapter 12, then you die. These are the bookends. And in chapter 1, Solomon begins to paint the earth as a grind, right? Generations come, generations go, but the earth remains forever. And that's throughout the whole book. Life under the sun, right, is this grind that's taking place. Psalm 90 in verse 10 says, 70 years you have upon this earth, 80 if your strength endures, but those years are filled with sorrow and anguish, right? Then you get to chapter 12 of Ecclesiastes, and what do you read? First 5 verses are about your body finding its way into this grind. Your body begins breaking down. I want to take you to a missing piece of marriage theology in the church. I don't see it at a lot of places. We need to do better with it. It's found in the middle of life is hard and then you die, and it's Ecclesiastes chapter 9, verse 9, which reads, endure life with your wife all your miserable days. Now, I'm in a room that knows the Bible, but I love being in churches on Sunday when it's not on the screen and Bibles are closed, and in a preacher voice, I'll go, endure life with your wife all your miserable days. And all throughout the congregation, you'll hear, It's good. And I get to say that's not what it says, but it's what a lot of Christians believe. This message has crept into the church, and I spend my days and a lot of time on Friday and Saturdays around the country encouraging churches away from this message. But the message goes something like this. God gave you your spouse to beat you down and to suck the life right out of you so you can be more like Jesus. And that message, let me tell you, that side by side, go back, before you teach on marriage, anytime you teach on marriage, please don't start in Genesis 3, start in Genesis 1 and 2. And paint this beautiful picture of walking side by side through the ground. That's what I love about our 25th wedding anniversary picture. Amy and I are walking side by side through the grind of life together, through the toilsome labor together. Martin Luther said God could have taken a bone from Adam's head, implying that women would rule over men. Could have taken a bone from Adam's foot, implying that men would rule over women. But instead, he took a bone from Adam's side. It implies mutuality, equality, mutual respect. But the word picture I love is this side by side walking through life together. So now with that in context, read, enjoy life with your wife whom you love all the days of this meaningless life that God has given you under the sun, all your meaningless days. For this is your lot in life, and in your toilsome labor, there it is again, there's the grind again. The word toilsome there means grueling. This side of heaven, Kossi just shared quite a bit about that, just the difficulties that come with what we do. Life is challenging, but God did not give you your spouse to be the toilsome labor. He didn't give you your spouse to be the grind of life. He gave you your spouse to go through the grind of life with. Your side-by-side partner through life and through ministry. And that we walk side by side together. Marital satisfaction is a decision that you make. It's not an outcome. It's not something you hope for. It's not something you wait for. I remind every couple I counsel or coach, I start with this. Jesus is your source. Satan is your enemy. Your spouse is your companion. And if you want to experience high levels of marital satisfaction, never treat your spouse like the source or the enemy. You individually plug into the true and only source of life, spend your days giving each other the overflow, then take your stand side by side together against the devil's evil schemes. Couples, yes, you most definitely have an enemy. It's just not your spouse. And your spouse makes a terrible source as well. You can enjoy life together. I tell the guys in our church, stop looking for greener grass. Where there's greener grass, there is a septic leak. Stay home and water your own lawn. For a good time, call home. Enjoying life together. I just want to ask you this question today. Do you have a marriage worth repeating? Do you have a marriage you want your children to have? This is why enjoying life together is so important. Walking side by side through the toilsome labor together. Your kids are watching. Your kids have a front row seat to your marriage. They see everything you do. They hear everything you say. They forget nothing, and then they repeat. That's how kids learn. That's exactly what Deuteronomy 6:4-7 teaches us about discipleship. Repetition is the key to learning. And they got thousands and thousands of hours a year to observe your marriage. Do you have a marriage worth repeating? My son and I, we love watching YouTube clips since he was very small. He's older now, so now it's reels and stories on Instagram. We send them to each other all day long. But when he was 5, I showed him the German Coast Guard. If you've never used this while teaching on communication in your church, tonight go back and look up German Coast Guard YouTube. 30-second commercial. Guys being trained day one on the German Coast Guard when a mayday comes in. Mayday, mayday, we are sinking, we are sinking. Hello? This is the German Coast Guard. Mayday, mayday, we are sinking, we are sinking. What are you sinking about? Carson was 5 years old, fell over in laughter because he got it. And a few weeks later, we're driving down the road, and I start singing a hymn from my childhood that goes like this. I was sinking deep in sin, far from the peaceful shore. And from the back seat, I heard, and what were you sinking about? And I looked at my wife and said, they see everything, they hear everything, they forget nothing. And repeat. Mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, give them a marriage worth repeating. Genesis 2:24. We look at this as a marriage verse, but it's every bit a parenting verse too. For this reason, a man will leave his father and mother. We've been teaching this verse to our kids since they were 5 and 7 years old. You could ask my son Carson when he was 5, what is your dad's definition of maturity according to Genesis 2:24? And Carson would go, I will not be with mom and dad forever, so plan accordingly. That's right. Because we reminded our kids all the time, you're a welcomed addition to this home. We love you, but you're not the center of it. We love you. You're a welcomed addition to this home. You're not the center of it. And your mom and I, we got big plans after you leave. And they'd be like, well, what are you going to do? Well, first of all, we're going to Disney World. That's how we're going to kick the whole thing off. For this reason, a man will leave his father and mother, be united to his wife, and they will become one flesh. This is also a verse about family of origin. Now, when you're a counselor, you want to get into the husband's family of origin, the wife's family of origin, where you can see the conflict come in. But as a pastor and one who enjoys being a comedian as well, I would like to use your family of origin as an opportunity to gather new material. And I want to give you a term that I think will set you free in your marriage. It's simply this, NBD, no big deal. You left home physically, relationally, emotionally. You understand that needs to happen to be married. But your family of origin still influences you. Doesn't define who you become as a couple, but it definitely influences your marriage. Look at all the ways your family of origin, talk about being able to have some fun with this, all the ways your family of origin influences you. It influences the way you worship. I'm married to an Assembly of God woman, and she's very expressive in worship. Who's my AG people in the room right now? They're very quiet. They feel all alone. You can be expressive, all right? And no one has to tell her to raise her hands. Like, Baptists have to be told to do everything. Stand up, sit down. The song has to actually say, lift your hands, and we still don't do it. And so there's a song we sing in our church called Gratitude, and it's got this line in the song, and I know it's coming, and I got to gear myself up mentally for this line that goes, so I throw up my hands and praise you again. Put your hands down, AJ. We're not worshiping right now. I'm telling a story. That guy was there. And I look over. She's already both hands up before that line even comes, and I gear myself up. I do this the same way every time. So I throw up my hands and praise you again and again. And as soon as that line's done, it's like, oh, that was exhausting. Oh, who's with me on that? That's your family of origin, right? Your family of origin affects your worship. It affects the way you vote. I imagine most of you are going to vote the same way your parents are voting. Most will vote the same way your parents vote on Tuesday. The way you save. I grew up in a home that taught savings was money you put away for a rainy day. Amy grew up in a home that taught savings was the difference between the actual price and the sale price. And as we go through these, I want to remind you of something. A different way is not necessarily the wrong way. Okay. No big deal. You will have more fun in your marriage and family if you start with the little. Be aligned on the big issues. Have fun with the little things. Be aligned on the major issues, but have fun with the little things. The way you drive, I see all signs on the road as laws to be followed. You break one, you go to jail. God stops. I'm passionate about following. My wife sees all signs on the road as suggestions for other people. She's taught me how to cut people off in traffic. Just keep your eye down. Don't look at them when you do this. How you fight, how you clean, how you joke, how you celebrate the holidays. I didn't understand why I was so frustrated early on in our marriage. By the time I pull the 46 box down out of the attic that says Christmas decor, I'm in no mood to celebrate the birth of my Lord and Savior. I'm ticked. And I didn't understand this early on. My son would bring over an ornament. Hey, Dad, I made this last year. Just put it on the tree. Why is this such a big deal? Family of origin. My wife grew up in a home with 46 boxes of Christmas decorations. My wife grew up in the White House. There's a tree in every room. There's garland over every door. There's lights inside. There's lights outside. So imagine you married that. I come from a home where we decorated for Christmas on a commercial break. My dad would go over to the crawl space and grab a 3-foot pre-decorated tree with a garbage bag over it, put it on the dehumidifier. Joy to the world, the Lord is coming. We would be right back to watching TV. It even affects the way you load the dishwasher. Now, I'm not saying my way is the only way. It is the manufacturer's recommended loading instructions. These are all no big deal. So let's practice it as a room, and you practice it for your marriage. I want you to make some noise if the one on the right is right. Okay. See how excited you're going to get? Make some noise if the one on the left is right. Those are our cat owners. That's actually why they do it. Listen, there's somebody worse than the person on the left, though. It's this person right here. You left a little bit on there so you could say it wasn't empty and you didn't have to go get a new roll. And when you did get a new roll, you do this nonsense right here. What'd you just save? 1.2 seconds right there? Make some noise if this brings great joy to your soul right here. That is proper toothpaste suspension right there. But you married this person right here. Or worse, this person right here. And you've watched them take their toothbrush and just scrape that stuff off the top. Like, what kind of animal won't use a cap? Make some noise if this brings great joy to your soul. Fresh, warm, fluffed, folded towel. But you married this person right here. Comedian Jeff Allen's got a great bit on this. He says, my wife now confronts me with everything with questions. Always asks me questions to confront me. I'll come in the bedroom and she's like, hey, is this your underwear on the floor? He's like, I sure hope so. If not, I'm going to have some questions of my own around this place. I hope you find moments this week in your marriage and family to say no big deal and get a laugh. No big deal and get a laugh. We've been taking some of this medicine this morning, Proverbs 17:22. A cheerful heart is good medicine, but a crushed spirit dries up the bones. And one of the reasons I love helping couples enjoy life together, it's my passion in life, is because I just work throughout the week as a pastor in Branson. Working with a lot of couples with crushed spirits. And I visit them, and coming out of the pandemic, it was more and more people just crushed spirits, and we forget about the joy we have in the Lord. We forget about that joy is a good thing. And if you are someone who enjoys laughter, it doesn't end when you step into the church. It doesn't end when you stand up to preach. And I think our church, after being there 23 years, most of them know, hey, this is Ted just kind of now being in his personality and who he is. And by the way, every pastor has a personality. Okay, so the serious pastors, the ones that are super serious all the time, they're functioning in their personality. That's why I was so grateful for Chuck Swindoll. There are other personalities that God uses. There's one way to salvation, but there's a lot of different ways to do ministry. And this room is full of different ways of people doing ministry. So lean into that with your marriage, with your family, and with your church. I wrote a book with Focus on the Family in 2020 on laughter. It was for couples, finding your shared sense of humor. It's called A Love That Laughs. It released 2 weeks before the global pandemic, which couldn't be a worse time release of a book ever. Nobody in March of 2020 was interested in laughing. We've sold 67 copies of that book in 4 years. But here was the main premise of the book. Couples who use laughter to manage stress and work through difficult conversations not only enjoy higher levels of marital satisfaction, but they stay together longer. And guys, if I can encourage you, if you're going to use laughter to work through difficult conversations, timing is everything. And I want to help you with that today just a little bit. Here's the number one thing you can do if you want to bring more laughter to your marriage. I'm going to say this to the husband, right? If you want to lead out on this and bring more laughter to your marriage, stop trying to be funny and just look for it. If your favorite comedians, Nate Bargatze's at the top of his game right now, Brian Regan, Jim Gaffigan, these guys, they are observational comedians. They just look around at life, and there is plenty of material all day long to draw from. You're constantly looking for sermon illustrations, and this has always been one thing that's fascinated me about pastors. You will meticulously write your sermon, word for word, but then just add a section for humor that you're just going to kind of wing. Let's just see how this goes. And I've been in plenty. They didn't go all that well. You should write your humor as well. You should write it and work through timing. And these guys are observational. They're just looking around at what's happening to them and then writing the material off of that. And I want to encourage you that stop trying to be funny, just look for it and call it out. And in comedy, you can typically get 3 laughs off of one observation real easy. Point it out, gets the laugh. Say it out loud, gets a second laugh. Make up a quick little story about it, gets a third laugh. In chapter 2 of A Love That Laughs, I share 38 benefits of laughter for your marriage, and I just want to share 7 of them with you quickly today. 1, humor opens us up for truth. Going back to Dr. Swindoll, he preached through the Bible verse by verse, and he used a lot of humor. He just knew the right moment to bring it in, and he knew the right moment to relieve the tension. Because that's exactly what humor, comedy, laughter, that's what it is. It's shocking of the brain. So when there's tension and you can relieve it with humor, and Dr. Swindoll did that. And I love what Dr. Swindoll said. He said, laughter is the most beautiful and beneficial therapy God ever granted humanity. Number 2, humor helps us cope. 19th century preacher Henry Ward Beecher said, a person without a sense of humor is like a wagon without springs, jolted by every pebble on the road. Good humor makes all things tolerable. And I can remember when the pandemic hit and my life and your life, everybody's life was just completely put on hold. Amy and I sat 4 hours every morning in the garage on lawn chairs, drinking coffee, listening to our 11 chickens lay their eggs. I don't know if you've heard a chicken lay an egg lately, but it's a pretty painful process. So we sat there and listened for 4 hours to, Wah! And I remember Amy looking at me saying, we are spending more time together than we've ever spent. Would you call this quality time? And we had to get back to being intentional. And we know this with marriage and with relationships. What was natural early on, you need to be intentional with later on. It helps us cope. Hearty laughter burns calories. According to Vanderbilt University, you can burn up to 40 calories. In a study, they said 40 calories with 10 to 15 minutes of hearty laughter. So skip your workout today and go watch Nate Bargatze. Clean comedian. Laughter reduces stress and tension. I do an event called Date Night Comedy. It has there's not a heavy burden for content. It's 3 to 5 laughs a minute. And 3 things we often hear at the end of that event is, haven't laughed that hard in a long time, my face hurts and my side hurts. I was in Rock Valley, Iowa, and a 65-year-old lady came up to me and said, Pastor, what are those 3 things people say? Haven't laughed that hard in a long time, my face hurts and my side hurts. She goes, you can add a 4th. I go, what's that? She goes, I think I peed a little. I said, then we've accomplished what we came here to do. Humor makes you more attractive. Humor makes you more attractive. Now we're getting into online dating, right? And most everybody checks on their online dating profile, I'm looking for someone with a sense of humor. Here's what they're not saying. They're not looking for someone who can tell them jokes all day long. They're looking for someone who knows how to laugh at themselves and invite others in. That's what it means to have a good sense of humor, because it also makes you relatable. Everybody in here wants to be around someone who can say something stupid, do something dumb, shake their head and be like, I can't believe I just said that. I can't believe I did that. Right? If you've ever walked into a room and people are laughing, you don't even know what was said, but you find yourself moving toward it. Because laughter is contagious. As my friend Yakov Smirnoff in Branson says, Russian comedian, he says, laughter is a universal language. We all laugh in the same language. It makes us relatable, and this is a big one for me. Humor makes shopping enjoyable. I hate grocery shopping with every ounce of my being. There's just too much stuff to pick from, and I've told Amy, when you send me a list to get stuff on the way home, it has to have very specific words on the cans and the bottles. You can't just say canned tomatoes, not enough information. So she sent me in once, and she said, just one thing on the way home, get me prepared mustard. I've never heard of prepared mustard in my entire life. So I go before our mustard section. I stand before this generous mustard section. I go through the whole thing, can't find it. I go through the second time, can't find it. 80-year-old lady's walking down the aisle, and I said, ma'am, I'm sorry, can I bother you for a second? Can you help me find prepared mustard? This woman didn't say one word to me. She got between me and the mustard. She looked at me. She looked back at the mustard section, looked at me one more time, and this was all she did. Who just learned what prepared mustard is for the first time in your life? It's all liquid mustard. I never knew it. So stop trying to be funny and look for it. It's everywhere. We were in the grocery store, Amy and I together, and she sent me over something. I saw this item. It made me laugh out loud. And it's worth me grabbing it to take it all the way back to Amy to show her, to see if I can get that silent patriotic laugh. I'm not going to say a word. I'm just going to show you what I showed her to see how you respond. Okay, you see what just happened? Now, there's a lot of people not laughing because they were raised on new math. But when we grew up, a lot of us, we were told, show your work. That's what the math teacher said. Somebody complained to Coke, they're taking up a third of the box to show their math. Listen, if you drive by Mount Pleasant Baptist Church and see this sign, don't you dare drive by without speaking it out loud. Do you know what hell is? Come hear our preacher. Now, here's where you can practice that rule of 3. Point it out to the person and let them laugh. Say it out loud, get a second laugh, then start making up bad sermon titles from whoever that preacher is. Be observational. We're in Branson, Missouri, and I do date night comedy with a friend of mine. One of the comedians is John Branyan, and he's been on Focus on the Family Radio, and John's in Indianapolis, and he does a whole bit on flipping Arkansas. And if you get time tonight, Google John Branyan, Flippin, Arkansas. It's a great bit. And we were driving back from an event one night, and he said, hey, don't you live an hour north of Flippin? I said, yeah, Homer Ranger Boats. Yeah, been there a couple times. He goes, did you laugh the entire time driving through Flippin, Arkansas? I said, no. Here, I'm just telling you, this is the power of it. Just someone pointing it out and reminding me. I told Amy, we're going to Flippin on the next date. And she goes, what's in Flippin? I go, a lot of humor, I guess. We're going to laugh. First sign you see when you pull into Flippin, Arkansas. You can't invite your lost friends to the Flippin' Church of God. You imagine something going wrong on a Sunday morning at this church? 911, what's your emergency? Yeah, I'm at the Flippin' Church of God. Somebody get me the Flippin' cops. You laugh, but the police cars say Flippin' police. You can't make this stuff up. So, you guys are a lot of fun, and I hope you bring more joy to your church. I love going to the churches for date night comedy, and the senior pastor has to get up and explain to the congregation why what we're about to do is okay. I usually work with like a marriage pastor, marriage director that's organizing the event, and they'll tell me, we just want the laughs. We're doing dinner. It's just going to be a fun night. You just bring the laughs. Well, you know, every event I do, I have to sit on the front row because if the senior pastor is opening in prayer, that prayer changes a lot of expectations. And I've been there prepared to do nothing but comedy when the pastor prays, and Lord, teach us tonight. Grow us in our marriage for the one in crisis, that tonight would be the moment. There's a lot of burden on laughter right here. And it's amazing to me the number of pastors that like have to explain to their congregation why laughter is okay and why what you're about to do isn't a sin. And so my encouragement to you is bring it into your home. More, I remember Chuck Swindoll got a letter from a lady once that said, I know you've thought about quitting ministry a time or two, or you get bad letters from people. That's what it was. You get bad letters from people saying you use too much humor in your sermons. And she goes, I am one wife and mom telling you, please don't stop the humor. Because we listen to your show, we listen to your radio broadcast every week. And your laughter and your humor is the only laughter and humor in our home. Don't stop. And we have a lady in our church. She's been a part of our church for 22 years. She went to be with the Lord in September, one of my favorite church members. And she went to be with the Lord at the age of 90 and spent 60 years of her ministry life in International Students Incorporated. Her passion in life was evangelizing international students while they were here at university, discipling them, and then sending them home to their nations to be leaders. And Pat and I would meet for coffee about once a month over the years. And I love asking the question of people, have you seen anything funny lately? And Pat sat down at Panera Bread one day, and I go, Pat, have you seen anything funny lately? And she goes, I saw it just yesterday while getting my mammogram up in Springfield. She's like 85 years old at the time. And I said, well, every pastor needs a good mammogram story. I said, what you got for me, Pat? She goes, well, you know, it was at Mercy Hospital. It's a Catholic hospital, and the nuns, they got verses all up and down the hallway at Mercy Hospital. Ted, what verse you think they got hanging on the mammogram machine at Mercy Hospital? I said, I have absolutely no idea. She said, 2 Corinthians 4:8, for we are hard-pressed on every side. Love you guys. I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. Turning it back over to Josh.